No, no, you're good. I just like to put it in the package.
So that's one of, those are a couple of the many ones I have.
You're gonna view from afar? Or?
I don't want to upstage your big day.
I would make an obscene gesture, but we're being recorded.
And you're on camera. And being recorded.
Hi, I know. I'm sorry, I can't do more than one thing at once.
There's no such thing as multitasking. Everybody says that it doesn't matter.
ADHD.
Thank you,
Did you see the description I came up with from your blog? Oh, okay.
I was going to email you and say, hey, my blog is posted, because it doesn't get sent out right away for some reason. But if in the event that my blog is different, I always set publishing. But next week, again, it's show and tell, and I'm going to put that in my blog too.
Sure.
I'm going to do it a little earlier this week because I know what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, mostly.
Right.
We'll play through number 123 and we'll sing it one time.
That's what you get to sit in the car till the service starts.
You know, I thought wardrobe malfunctions, flame malfunctions.
Yeah.
Too.
Candle man.
It's really not, okay.
Turn the candle sideways, I think helps.
Well, welcome. My name is Bryan. My pronouns are he, him. I'm welcoming all the people that are joining us online as well as everyone who has come to join us in person. A couple of announcements, well, actually more than a couple, so let's just get ready. Here we go. First of all, we try to keep the service to an hour, but we don't like to hold hostages, so if you need to leave before the service is over, we do want to maintain the integrity of the service. So if music has been prepared or other things, we like to continue to do it, but feel free to leave if you need to. Also, we do not take an offering, so we have an offering plate in the back. We would really appreciate your support. if you feel so moved to give that. I hope that Shelley's time last week was good, and we'd love to hear feedback about that. I haven't actually watched it yet. Bible Boot Camp sounds very interesting as a person who is a theological scholar, so I've got to watch it. I love Shelley's presentation. Next Friday, March the 7th at 6:30 is our movie night at the Grendelins. Eating ourselves to death, isn't that right?
Something like that.
Something like that.
That's not the activity, it's the movie.
Well, then I'm not coming. That's it. You know, treats and me.
Fast food will be served.
We will have food, but we won't eat ourselves to death.
Yeah, that was just a mess, right? So looking forward to seeing everybody there. Next, third Friday service is Friday, March the 21st, which is actually the spring equinox, also known as Ostara in the Earth Center traditions. And Dawn is putting together a service that looks like the new pinwheel of principles and values from the recent UU adoption. We will be making crafts and having snacks, see, there too, as we celebrate this particular time in the wheel of the year. The wearing of pastel colors, well, kind of, all right, and spring finery, such as garden hats and Easter bonnets, is highly encouraged. That sounds very exciting. I have to dig up my Easter bonnet. Let's see that. Welcome also to Dawn as our leader for this particular month in March. We really appreciate that. Today we're going to be talking about joy, and joy as an act of resistance, and more to come about. A special announcement that I actually pressed backspace apparently over it that's not written down is that this Joy Sunday and topic is a two-part kind of thing. Next Sunday, we're having a very special Sunday, at least it's special in my heart, because, you know, as a school teacher, I love to have show and tell, especially if I didn't have a lesson plan prepared for the day, because, you know, an assembly was supposed to happen and it didn't, so now you have to step back and punt, right? So that's not really what's happening this next Sunday. What I'm going to invite you to do, and you're going to get this in the MailChimp as well, is that anyone who would like to, I would invite you to bring either a story, short story, or an artifact, or something to share that brings you joy. And we're going to try to abbreviate certain parts of the service so that everybody who wants to can do that. And of course that service might go over just a tiny bit, but we're going to try to keep it as brief as possible. So again, bring an artifact and or a story that you'd like to, you know, show and tell. So,
Are
you know.
chickens allowed?
Well,
Pictures.
if they were, I would bring a few, but probably not. Although, you know, I probably will wear the stole again next Sunday because chickens bring me joy. Although some of them challenged me this week. But anyways, we're looking forward to that show and tell Sunday. We're looking for volunteers to work on the security plan committee, and we will be electing a new treasurer for next year. See Kelly McCown for more information. Please remember to sign up online for treats or to see Alice. There will be an OWL, Our Whole Lives facilitator training at FUS in April. Please see Kelly McCown if you might be interested. We would like to send at least 2 people from Dakota UU. I think that's all the announcements I have written and scripted, but Kathy's going to give us another one.
Our Wells of Wisdom small group that is still getting up and running, and we're trying to meet on the second Saturday of every month. Next week we'll be coming to my concert instead of having a meeting. So check with other people for carpool options, and tickets are online.
Thank you.
Kelly, do you know the dates in April of the OWL training?
Do not. I don't know that they have been decided yet.
Okay, thank you.
Other announcements? Seeing none, I feel like I'm running a board meeting, right? I would invite you to take a deep, slow, gentle breath, to take yourself to a place of unity and fellowship. Separate yourself from the chaos of the world as much as it is possible to do these days. and come together in this time and meditate on this musical prelude. I invite everyone to remain seated and join us in the opening words and the lighting of the chalice. Come, let us gather in the spirit of hope, in the embrace of community, in the shelter of shared faith.
Though the world may tremble and uncertainty may cloud our days, we are here.
We are here to kindle joy, not as escape, but as a defiant act of love, a beacon against despair. Practicing joy is an act of resistance.
May this time together be a reminder that joy is not frivolous, but sacred, not naive, but courageous, not fleeting, but a wellspring of resilience.
Our chalice is a sign of our enduring faith. In its small but steady flame, we see the truth that light persists, that love prevails, that joy is a power we wield against darkness.
May the flame of our chalice remind us that even in times of struggle, the sparks of laughter, kindness, and wonder are acts of resistance. Let us carry this light within us and into the world.
Therefore, in the spirit of joy, resistance, and resilience, we light this chalice together and say,
May
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, to serve you, Spirit of freedom, in the fullness of community.
And now I invite you to rise as you are able and join us in our opening hymn, which is 149. Lift every voice and sing. 149.
Every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound
seated.
Friends, we pause now during our service to acknowledge that we stand and sit upon the traditional territories of the indigenous people of the Dakota, for whom this very county and congregation are named, and at least 10 other tribes of Native people throughout the current borders of the state of Minnesota. Over hundreds of years, Native communities across America have demonstrated resilience and resistance in the face of violent efforts to separate them from their land, culture, and each other. Today, Indigenous people remain at the forefront of movements to protect Mother Earth and the life she sustains, along with the preservation of their own human cultures and traditions. We acknowledge that it is critical to be an active part of public intervention, taking necessary steps toward honoring Indigenous communities and enacting the much larger project of decolonization and reconciliation. May this acknowledgement be not only a reminder, but even more so, an inspirational call to action to work to ensure whatever reparations are possible be carried out throughout this ancient holy land we now call home. And in this regard, if you check in the back, there's going to be a capital rally in support of some Indigenous efforts. So check in the back for that. And that was our beloved community moment.
And now this is a time during our service when we invite you to come forward if you feel so moved to do so, and light a candle and share a joy and or concern. And if anyone online who is joining us would like a candle lit and to share your joy or concern, Dawn will be happy to light a candle on your behalf.
I'm gonna say it's Papa's birthday.
Oh, that's great.
Papa's birthday's coming up.
Wednesday.
I don't know which one I have to light from.
Happy birthday.
Should we sing a song?
This is the song
I turned the keyboard on, so I had to turn it on.
This is a joy. Our daughter Emily was in town for almost a week, but we didn't get to see her that much, but that was kind of a good thing because she was very busy doing great things, and she spent most of Friday at our house, and it was amazing to watch her juggle all these things that she has going on in her life.
Seeing none, or seeing no more, I'm going to take an opportunity to light a candle about in honor of a person that I'm going to be speaking about today, Auntie Lola. More to come about that. Stay tuned. May her legacy and light shine on. And now, I will light a final candle for all of the joys and concerns that remain unspoken. May we know that whatever befalls us in life, we are held in the loving embrace of this community. And now we say together, for all of these joys and concerns, both spoken and unspoken,
We hold you in our hearts.
I have two readings to share today. One is a rather historical reading, which is an excerpt from a story written by Toy Derricotte called The Telly Cycle. And just to give reference, Telly is the name of a pet fish. Reminds me of somebody in this congregation who is not here with us today, but here with us in spirit. She might be in another continent, I don't know. So the title of this sub-part of the story is called Joy is an Act of Resistance. Joy is an act of resistance. Why would a black woman need a fish to love? Why did she need a flash of red living in the corner of her eye? And if she could love nothing up close, but had to step away from it, come back to drop a few seeds, and then let it grab onto her as if it caught her, on some book that couldn't hurt. Why did she need a fish to write of, a red thorn, or among the thorns that flower? What does her love have to do with 500 years of sorrow, then joy coming up like a small breath, a bubble? What does it have to do with the graveyards of the Atlantic in her mother's heart? The second reading is by Bryan and it's called Let Joy Be Your Resistance. The world has ground to a halt. I, not this pair of feet, with which I shall make merry, we have mourned, and will continue to mourn. But may we choose not to lose everything. The rhythm of change causes me to sing, my heart to leap with the possibilities of a new tomorrow. This is our love cry, our lay down our lives cry. We call out for the good of all. We call out for a united new day. May our mourning turn to dancing. May our ashes turn to beauty. May we rise as the phoenix on wings of restoration, the power of love being the flame in our wake. Well, let's address the elephant in the room. I wish I had, as I expressed earlier, a colorful story to talk about this wound on my forehead. Was it serendipitous? I certainly hope not. But it is because I reached to the top of the pantry this morning to grab the canister of sugar, and it decided to fall on my head and scatter around. And it didn't bring me joy. So why this joy thing? Well, the one thing it brought to thicken the narrative of joy were some interesting thoughts that were not there before. So maybe I just needed to be hit over the head to get some new thoughts. More on that later. But today's topic is about joy as resistance. And interestingly enough, as Kathleen and I had an exchange before the service, a lot of the things that were chosen in the service without my participation actually ended up being chosen, again, serendipitously, because of who I'm going to refer to in the story that begins this particular presentation. Auntie Lola. Auntie Lola, who was not my aunt, was a black woman in the very first congregation that I belonged to as a child, where I remember what was going on. It was a little congregation in rural Missouri. You've heard me talk about my growing up, and you've heard me talk about how conservative that tradition was. But in the spirit of thickening the narrative of joy, I remember quite fondly a few things about growing up in that little congregation. And as many of you have heard me talk about before, I grew up in a tradition where my ancestors were abolitionists in the southern part of Missouri, trying to get slaves escaped safely to the state of Illinois. And so that tradition carried on in our minds and our hearts to the point where we were one of the very few congregations in rural southern Missouri which was integrated, even in that time and in that day. And so this black woman was one of the several members of our congregation who was African American. But what's really special in this particular story is the amount of joy that she brought to others. Now, Auntie Lola also just happened to be, this is where all of these coincidental things started to come together, she happened to be the person who taught me how to play the piano as well. And I learned then how to play the piano in a very rich, gospel-y tradition. Is that a word, gospel-y? Well, it is now. I have a PhD. I can say whatever I want. Make up words like Shakespeare. And so that led me on to be a different stylistic sort of musician in many respects. And of course, not surprisingly, I joined jazz band in high school and in college, and I loved doing that. But one of the other things that ended up coming about, which some of you have heard this story, is that eventually while I was in seminary, I had visited Chicago to meet a bunch of colleagues at the Chicago Theological Seminary and had the opportunity to play at Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, where Barack Obama was a member. But this is way before he was in an elected office. And the song that we began our service with today, Lift Every Voice and Sing, was the one that I played on the organ, which she, Auntie Lola, had taught me how to play on the piano originally. And the reason I was chosen for that is because the pastor of that congregation had been the visiting professor at United Seminary for preaching class. So I also learned how to preach without notes because of Jeremiah Wright, who is a retired pastor, again, Barack Obama's former pastor as well. And he, while I was in his class, had joined us during chapel and realized that I played the piano differently than most of the people that were musicians at United. And he invited me to come and shock his congregation and play Lift Every Voice and Sing, and then introduced me from the balcony, and there was a wind of shock that went through the congregation that I was the person playing that Black national anthem. And I owe it all to Auntie Lola. But there's more to the story because let's get back to Joy. Auntie Lola taught me how to play the piano from a wheelchair. She had lost part of one of her legs due to complications with diabetes and had struggled for most of her life to get the kind of health care that she needed. As many of you probably know, in rural Black communities, health care still is not something that's accessible to many. And certainly not back in the when I was a child. And she lived an entire life. Her husband had passed on by the time that I had come into her teaching. And she was about, I think at that point, the story, she was about 87, 88 years old. And here's the thing. I will never forget that almost every Sunday, the Sundays that she could make it, she would sit at the entrance of the church in her wheelchair and say good morning and smile to each and every person who walked through the door. Despite all the odds, despite all of the hardship that she had been through in her life, having lost her husband and actually having lost both of her children, and struggling with physical illnesses and losing a limb, among other kinds of complications. And many people in our aside times when we would talk after church would remark about how I don't know how this woman stays so positive. And the positivity resonated with the kind of music that she taught me how to play as well. But fearlessly and with boldness and courage, she came and she spread joy to every single person that she could. One day, I remember hearing the pastor talk to her, and this was actually during Sunday school hour, where we were supposed to be learning, but they were having a conversation because people were late, and that happens, because they're not used to snow in southern Missouri, so everybody was late to church. And I remember him asking her, you should share with people why you are so joyful all of the time, despite all the things that you've been through. And she's like, well, it's not really much. It's just like, if I'm not joyful, they win. If I sit here in despair, and if I sit here in sorrow, and if I sit here in anger, that is negatively affecting my life, they win. Kind of reminds me of a wise person that once said, when they go low, we go high. If anybody has ever heard that before. Who is linked to my story, you see how I wove that in, right? So, and she went on to talk about how, yes, it's important to get out and do things. It's important to make changes in the world. It's important to take some of your righteous anger and be a participatory part of our democracy, or what's left of it. I added that one. She didn't say that. And she moved us in ways that I had rarely been moved since. So that's where the theme today comes from, is joy is an act of resistance. So what does that mean for us? Well, the first thing I want to say as a sort of like apology up front, this is not about the power of positive thinking. This is not about keep courage and keep your smile on your face despite the fact that everything is a mess. It's more about understanding that joy is 4 things that I want to express my thoughts about. The first is that joy is a type of activism. When you are joyful, and you sometimes have to really work to be joyful, it is not something that comes naturally to everyone. You are being an activist. How? How is joy activism? Well, lots of people have written about this, and I could cite a lot of things, but I'm just going to summarize all of those thoughts by saying, if you are joyful, it's contagious, and people will start to join you on your journey and say, why are you so joyful when everything is just wrong? And you say, because if I don't live in joy, they win. Joy is activism. There's so many different ways. It's so contagious. I know that in my small area that we don't have a lot of people, but for lack of a better example, I'm often in the post office picking up hatching eggs and baby chicks that are, yes, mailed through the U.S. Post Office. More on that at fellowship hour. But I walk in, and the post people who are hard-working, blue-collar folk who know me and get a lot of fresh eggs, because you got to keep the post office people happy. They look at me, and they see my smile, and they say, well, you're in a good mood this morning. And then they're barely able to smile. And I say, well, it's not so much about being in a good mood. It's just saying, why come in here and spread negativity whenever I can come in and spread joy and love to everyone? And here's your eggs, by the way. And the reason I'm using that as an example is not just because I want to keep the post office people happy, but it's because they're working hard. Has anybody in here ever been a post office delivery person? I mean, that's pretty treacherous in Minnesota at times. And they come through, yeah. I mean, and my Becky, if you're watching, I'm talking about you. She comes through no matter what. Now, we haven't had a lot of snow, but there's lots of other things that have happened, like mud, because I live on a dirt road, all of those things. But she still smiles at me. And I feel like I'm partially responsible for that because of spreading joy. And what does that have to do with activism? Because maybe just one little spark in my rural conservative community of my joy can help people see that there's another side to the story. Because currently, many of the people in my community are quite upset that they made a choice during the recent election because they've lost farm funding all of a sudden. It's hard to keep joy. But joy is activism. The second thing is joy, related to that, is subversive. Joy is subversive because people will want to know, why are you smiling? As I say sometimes to my puppy, what did you do wrong? Why are you so happy? What did you pick up off the floor that I don't know about? But people will look at you and say, I wonder what she's thinking. I wonder what is inside her mind right now. And how can I access that? Joy is subversive because people will talk about you. And there's really no such thing as bad press. Now, I say that because I've had some pretty bad press before. But people will still know me, for the most part, for my triumph always of the concept of trying to do love things in the community. But joy is subversive because it gets people thinking about, what's really going on here? Like, I think of Auntie Lola, people looking at her with one leg in a wheelchair, and she's 87 years old, and she's still at the front door saying, good morning, just so you know you are loved. It's subversive. It changes you. It changes them. Because if you don't show joy, they win. Joy is also a political strategy. It's also related to that, but political strategies are a little different because you have more of an agenda other than just joy. Joy is a political activity because in the same way, when you do go out and you participate in activism, it is most likely you're doing so because you've been angry at the power structure, right? But if you show joy and you experience joy, it makes that active resistance that you're participating in a little bit more enjoyable. See how I looked at it? Enjoy. Because, who wants to go march in January in Minnesota at the Capitol? Well, not many. But if you work really hard at using the political strategy of employing joy, it will make your experience better, but it will make other people's experience better, and you might get more people to come and march and do the things that we've done, some of us, and continue to do. And we support others that do. Joy is a political strategy. It helps people see, okay, I may not agree with what they're doing, but they've got something that I don't have. Because, let's face it, a lot of the political decisions that have been made in this country more recently, but this isn't the only time, have been made because people are unhappy. And they are being made to feel divided. People are being made to feel as if they don't count. They are misinformed. And so, if we could utilize a political strategy, ourselves individually, of being joyful, even in the presence of disparaging kinds of things that are going on, we can use that as a political strategy to help change the world. Because if we don't employ joy, they win. And my favorite, the fourth point of why I think employing joy, being joyful, and utilizing it in our lives is it is a life journey. Now, one of the things that we often do is we talk about the Judeo-Christian history of the Unitarian Universalist traditions, but I'm going to call to the Eastern traditions today, because joy for Eastern religions is a little bit different from what maybe we conceptualize here. And I am going to take joy into this direction because I think this is the way that we can employ joy even when it's hard. And that is, in Eastern traditions, joy is about centering oneself, taking yourself to a place of happiness, even in the midst of strife, and detaching yourself from all of these things around you. You know how we start the service and I say, try to separate yourself from the chaos? Well, for Eastern traditions, it's a very profound, intentional thing to enter into different types of meditative states in order for you to sort of rid yourself of all of those things that are distracting you and making you unhappy. Not, again, to use the power of positive thinking, but if I were to superimpose a psychological and theological ideology in this conversation on Eastern traditions, it's about what you've heard me say before, earlier to this presentation, is thickening the narrative. That comes from narrative theory in psychology, and there's also narrative theory in theology, where it's like, if you want this part of your story to get more attention, if you want the positivity in your life to get more attention, you have to give it attention. You have to thicken the part of the narrative that you want to thicken to take the place of the negativity. Not because the negativity doesn't exist anymore, but because after all, if we don't have joy in our hearts, what's this all worth anyway? Why fight if we don't have at least part of that hope, that spark, that flame of joy? Why do we go and do this? This reminds me again of Auntie Lola, because in lots of other kinds of conversations, in the parking lot after church, that was a big deal when I was growing up. People would again question her. I can't imagine coming to this church and you not being here. And of course, I remember when she passed away, it was a huge ordeal. And she would say, "Well, I'm just me. I'm just doing what I believe in, and I just do what comes naturally to me." And people would say, "But gosh, how do you do it? How do you do it?" And she would respond by saying, "Because the other side of the coin is way worse. If I don't have joy and happiness to believe in, if I don't have hope to believe in, if I don't have the love that I believe in my spirituality that I want to spread to everyone, then why are we even fighting for justice? Why are we fighting to do the right thing if we can't see the spark of happiness that it brings not only to us, but to all those other people who are marginalized and oppressed and victimized and discriminated against?" So that very idea of making joy a part of your daily life, by just stopping and taking a moment and centering yourself, and do all kinds of different meditational practices exist. You can pick out which ones work for you. One of the most recent ones is that in our green room where we do our microgreens and plant sprouts, sometimes, and I'm going to put Josh on the spot because he does this too. I know he won't mind me doing that. It's part of being a pastor's partner. But sometimes whenever we're really frustrated, like yesterday one of the heaters broke down in the chicken brooder and some of the baby chickens were getting cold and we lost a couple of them. We just had to take a moment and pause and literally go in the green room and see this green life all around us and just be silent and see the life. Because even in the midst of death, there is life still. You have to pause and you have to work at being joyful. You have to find those areas of your narrative that you want to thicken. And so if it means to walk in the green room with all of these LED lights that emulate sunlight whenever it's cloudy, which is also very important in Minnesota, I'm finding, can just be a meditative experience. When I play the piano, I'll sit on the keyboard and I will just play, and I get into this trance-like state that brings me joy. Find what brings you joy and do it. Which is a great segue for what I would like for us to do next Sunday, which is to bring something to share, either a story or an artifact, and let's thicken this narrative together. Let's see what brings us all joy. And as Alice asked, can you bring a chicken? Well, I'll bring chickens on this, but think about what brings you joy, because if you don't work at being joyful yourself in your own life, then it's very difficult to bring joy and use joy as a subversive political strategy and type of activism. It starts within here. Because if you don't employ joy in your own life, they win. And so, as we move forth from this place today, I challenge you to not only think about the ways that you can use joy and all of those other facets of what we want to see in the world, to change the world. I also challenge you to look inside yourself and find more deeply than ever what brings you joy and do it. Think about it. Take time. Remember those people in your life that bring you joy or brought you joy, like Auntie Lola. Remember the things in your life that are really important to you, like your partner, your spouse, your children, your grandparents. your chickens, your puppy, your kittens, all of those things and more. Your garden, whatever it is, because joy starts there. And that is the challenge sometimes, because we are overwhelmed by existential grief. If you're like me, it's almost a daily thing now. We have to work at it, because if we don't work at it, we will forget what we're fighting for. May it be so.
So the piece I wrote called Healing Water, I'm going to play for you. Of course, writing this was pure joy. And I invite you to remember a place of water that you were at whatever time in your life, and go there now during the music rather. And it could be just a bubbling brook, a stream, an ocean, a river, whatever, but this music is all based on that. And so close your eyes, and may it be a safe container for you to remember in the future in times of uncertainty.
That was not planned, by the way. So I open the floor to any reflection that you'd like to do.
So I'm a big believer in joy. My wife will tell you every day, I say to her or my son, whatever, work with joy, do this with joy. Whatever they're going to do, I say do it with joy. All our lives for church, we're told to work hard, try hard. Hard in our society is not a good thing. So why work hard when you can work with joy? And that's, I just always say that to everyone, do whatever with joy. Probably more so than my wife would like me to.
I think I might have heard the answer in your talk, I want to hear you be more specific and direct on the question of, what do you say to someone who says, I can't be joyful, I can't, this is so outrageous, this is so evil, this is so ugly, I have to keep angry and fighting it all the time. If I take a moment to, love each other and be joyful, I'm accepting things that are unacceptable. What do you say to a person who says that?
Well, the first thing I would do in a very pastoral care kind of sense is I want them to know that I heard what they said, and I validate that. But that's more of a psychological strategy to help people, because a lot of people just need to be heard. And then to try to transform the conversation, I would, in a more gentle way than sitting up here and repeating the mantra in a very African-American type tradition, they win. I was trying to build that honoring Jeremiah Wright kind of preaching. Didn't get any amens in here like he does. But don't know how I feel about that. No. But then I would say, if you feel that way and you focus yourself on that so much so that you lose all of the other parts of your life, then they win. And that's what they want you to feel. And so, and it depends on the person, because some people don't want to be subversive, right? But I do. I like that. But other ways that you can combat that and say, but did you know that it takes more, I don't know if this is true, it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile? I've heard that my whole life. I don't know if it does, but I just like to smile. There are lots of different ways that you could respond to that, where you help people understand that it takes, and I know this is a psychological truth from research, it takes more energy from you to be negative than it does to be positive. And when you are radiating joy, then you're giving energy to other people. And so there's a lot of different ways, very specifically, that I would respond to that. And these are just little examples, but it depends on the person. Because some people are so angry and so frustrated that they need to go through that. It's like one of the other parts about, when you said work hard, I think of this. In our society, you get 3 bereavement days. Okay, you lose somebody in your family, let's get back to work. Well, I honor people who are angry and frustrated, who can't live in joy right in this moment. So I don't want it to be seeming as if you have to be joyful no matter what, because you have to feel it. You have to feel the anger and you have to give it. So you have to grieve well. And so sometimes the response to you the response that I would honor in this is say, give the person some time, hear them, and then instead of trying to make them joyful, you be joyful and model it until they can't stand it anymore.
I think another additional thought to that is that one of the frustrations I see oftentimes with politicians or other social commentators, they will complain about the situation right now and be angry and be frustrated with it, and I get that, but they don't, sometimes they don't have a vision of what to do instead. They just complain about what's wrong, but what do you do instead? And that's where I think the joy can come in, is having that vision of what we could do instead and focusing on that part of it, not ignoring the other part, but knowing that we have to put that energy into a positive way instead of a negative.
I really like that also. I was going to somehow weave this into my presentation, and since you've given me a segue to it, now I can, at least in the response part. So part of the joy that I try to practice is just recognizing what's around us and the beauty that's all around us. And I'm certainly not espousing to be Muslim, but I'm going to do this without being emotional. Last night, I was going to check that birder that had broken down, And I was overcome with emotion because, you know, I lost a few little baby chicks and I was frustrated. I mean, we still have 300, but, you know. I looked up in the western sky. I had no idea because I tried to be off social media because of that blackout thing that many of us were trying to do. And so I didn't even realize that it was Ramadan. And I have so many friends, a few exes, that are Muslim, and so therefore I usually pay attention to that and go on social media and say Ramadan Mubarak, whatever, you know, Ramadan Kareem. And I looked to the western sky and I just had not thought about it. And I saw the crescent moon and I saw Jupiter and I just said out loud, Ramadan Mubarak. And I'm not even Muslim, but just that brought me joy because I knew that I wasn't the only person that was doing it. People were looking at the sky and saying, Ramadan Mubarak. I see the moon. I see the crescent. And so, anyways, that's a whole other presentation. But again, I'm human, I still cry sometimes. I hit myself on the head apparently sometimes too. Well, I
Can
didn't
I-
mean to capitalize
can I-
on that.
Can I say
Oh,
something?
yes, go ahead, Megan.
I just have a couple of quick thoughts. Your sermon was very meaningful to me and thought-provoking. For some reason, it reminded me of the 60s and 70s and songs of resistance and how joyful it was to sing the songs of resistance and the connection with those around who were singing with. And it seems to me that the songs of resistance had a profound effect on the outcome of the Vietnam War. And I would encourage people to include songs of resistance now. And the other thing about joy, if anyone's ever read Anne Frank's book, her diary, there's so much joy in her diary. I read it when I was in high school, and I should reread it as a adult. But there's so much joy in that, and what a time for her and her family, and to still be able to feel joy was just amazing. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I talked about in my blog this week to echo that is a woman that I listened to as a young child who was a Holocaust survivor, who talked about how no matter what, when she was in the concentration camp, they still put a menorah up and they lit it and they celebrated the tradition no matter what, even if they were dying or they knew they would die the next day. That's a hard act to follow. Mm-hmm. Well, with that, may the conversation continue, not just after service during treat time, but let's just keep on talking about joy, and maybe we'll just epitomize it. So I invite you to rise as you're able and join us in our closing hymn number 1064. I'm going to walk into the book.
Okay, so I just want everyone to know that we're not in a speedboat of Blue Boat Home. We're going to slow it down so that the words resonate in us and contain that what we need.
Let's not rush the joy.
Yeah, right.
I've been sailing on
much.
Let us go forth and be joyful, even the hardest times, because if we're not joyful, they win.
Amen. I mean, really, it's so applicable, but I kept my mouth shut. And besides, I've reduced it a little bit lately. I mean, really. I was very energized by your yes, thank you so much. I told you, you guys, about the comments in church about being interested in it and stuff changed.
Oh, right.
You started, it's all your fault.
We realized, I think we didn't pay you for the eggs we got. We'll do that online.
Oh, silly.
Can I tell you that, so the song I thought of doing today, we'll figure next week.
I was also going to ask you if we could do somewhere in the service. I've got the Georgia goes on.
Oh, sure.
Yes, that'd be good.
Every once in a while.
Oh, that's true. I wish you joy. I've started to write a few little jokes, and a couple of friends of mine from one of the courses is going to do an open mic night, and they're going to do a set. I'm thinking about maybe I would too. But, so I've collected a couple of jokes I might share this week, because, you know, being funny. But this one is not an original, but I love it. It says, being an Irish heritage. The Irish have an abiding sense of tragedy which sustains them through temporary periods of joy.
I love that.
The temporary periods of joy. Why am I happy? This is
Right.
not right.
Wait. This is not how I started it.
Yeah, no. So anyway.
I mean, I really love it.
Yes.
Wait, please.
So half week is vegan
Lunch.
I wonder if you
and banana bread.
I even thought about rescinding one of those conditions. Yeah. Because I thought all those things I was thinking about looking at the church and not giving up. And I said, but if about 20,000 Americans have $24,000 in income, 165 people are from Bryan, I could support the design trade, not my still be on that. But did I want to give up my, whatever, what would you do? I was like, okay, Jim, can I give you papers? They're weighing me down.
I'll take your weight.
Okay.
That's like, get together.
I don't know what to do with these things.
Okay,
I got most of it. Does this go in?
that goes in there too, yeah,
Okay.
you can make room or you can leave the, singing bowl out. And this goes on the back table back there.
This is apple cake and banana bread.
Sounds good. Remember those? It's probably getting no sleep. Don't forget your name tag. With no sleep. Don't forget your name tag. Here, hey, Jill, do you want a carpool to the concert next? Because there's a couple options.
That was a trick for everybody. She wasn't sister.
That's just me and my son. Okay, I mean, we live fairly